Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. The topic for this module is problem identification and opportunity recognition. And we have Cole Wolfson here with us today. Hi, Cole.
Hello.
Thank you for doing this. And problem identification and opportunity recognition is a big topic. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your background and how it relates to this topic around innovation.
Sure. So my job's always been around identifying problems and crafting solutions. I got my undergraduate degree in anthropology from the University of Maryland. And my first job out of school was working in international development, mostly post-disaster and post-war zones. So something terrible would happen somewhere. The US government would put out a request for proposals to put some money into addressing that problem. And my company would send me to that place. I'd probably spend about 4 weeks or so on the ground doing a rapid needs assessment, looking at all of the problems, all of the opportunities that might exist to help solve those problems, and then craft a proposal for what our interventions would look like. And then if we won, I would start the implementation of that program and then hand it off to somebody else, and then go off to the next country. So after doing that for a while, I came back to Pittsburgh, where I did something similar. Actually, first I got my MBA from Pitt, and then I did something similar in that I was, kind of doing proposals and grant development for innovation works. So smaller scale, but still kind of the same idea. And while in that job, my wife and I opened up a brick and mortar natural pet food business, a pet retail business called Pedagogy, which is where I am right now in the back room. And, we started using the store as a guinea pig for all of the new companies that were coming out of innovation work. So if anybody had anything to do with needing consumer insights, consumer research, piloting new technologies, we would do a lot of them through the store. And so that actually led me into working with LaunchLab Gear, where I was actually directly helping these companies identify what problems they were trying to address, what opportunities they were going to take advantage of, and then help them turn that into their business. And that's what I do today.
Wow. So you definitely have expertise in this field, no doubt about it, right?
Yep.
So I wanted to ask you about, problem identification and opportunity. And you mentioned it a couple of times, problem identification and opportunity recognition. What does that mean to you in your business?
Yeah. So, at first blush, I could see thinking about problem and opportunity in kind of two sides of the same coin, where, if there's a problem, there's an opportunity in solving it. But I'm trying to kind of think about the nuance a little bit between the two terms. And so I see that, finding a solution to a problem, fulfilling a need that exists in the world can create an opportunity. But there are other kind of opportunities that exist in the world that you can take advantage of as part of a business that doesn't necessarily mean that you're solving for a problem. So, if you're not solving a problem, fulfilling a need, when you're taking advantage of an opportunity, I would say that just taking advantage of an opportunity is more like fulfilling a want, fulfilling a desire. So, fulfilling a desire, when you're trying to build like a sustainable, possibly scalable business, is a slightly harder proposition than maybe fulfilling a need, a necessity, because as things change, economies, the fashion of the day, whatever it happens to be, you may not have a critical offering to the world. So, it's fulfilling an opportunity that doesn't solve a problem is still a very valid, fine way to run a business, but it approaches business in a slightly different way than I would say you do when you actually solve for a problem. So, finding a problem and solving for it creates opportunity, but there are also opportunities that are not problem related that exist in the world.
Yeah, and I think that's a critical distinction to make here, because when we talk to students, generally, at least in my entrepreneurship students, we tell them identifying problems are great. You know, we want to be able to do that, but don't just leave the problem. So think about how you can go about solving it or addressing it, and don't just be someone who identifies problems and walks away, right? We can all do that, but how can you do something that will benefit either your business or society around the problem that you've identified? So I'm glad you made that distinction, because people can look at this in different ways and still arrive at the same conclusion, I think.
Yeah, and you know, when we bring companies into our accelerator, we see two kind of ways that companies come in. Sometimes it is somebody who maybe has worked in industry before, and so they've witnessed a firsthand problem in whatever industry they come out of, and they want to start a company in order to solve for that problem. But then we have other people who have come up with some crazy technology that can do whatever, and then they're looking for the kind of market application for that to grow a business. And what we tell those people, especially those in the second category, is that you do have to find a problem to fall in love with. And you have to fall in love with that problem, not with the solution. Because if you just take this tech and you're trying to apply it to different things, you're always chasing that opportunity. Whereas if you have this tech and you identify the problem and you are solving for this problem, you might find out that whatever the solution is that you came in with isn't actually the appropriate solution for it. But in the sense that you are kind of laser focused on solving for that problem, whatever you come up with will directly address it, which gives you an opportunity to really start a business. So there's nuance there, but you can grow a business. You just have to recognize what it is that you have and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, right. Actually, that's a very nice segue into my next question, because we use the business model canvas here as our primary teaching tool. And, you know, the really everything centers around the value proposition and what value have you created. And so when you talk about, you know, people falling in love with the problem, not their solution, you know, that's important when you're starting to create that value. So what has been your experience with creating value around innovation?
Well, when it comes to the business model canvas, I know that a lot of times when you're filling one out, the steps are typically are what first customer segment, and then the second one is maybe value prop, and then you go on to the channels or relationships or something like that.
Yes.
Those first two, in that order, customer segment then value prop, in my mind are the most critical when you're trying to figure out what your actual value proposition is. And again, I see customer segments or identifying customer segmentation kind of as defining problem. Who is it that you're designing your business for? Who is your customer? But why are they your customer? What are the issues? And being able to define that very clearly as part of your customer segmentation, I think, is like the most critical first step when you're doing business model canvas, because that second step, that value prop, ties directly to those customer segments in the sense that is a problem that you're solving for. And so when you put together those value props, they really need to be measurable, specific, and directly address the problems faced by your customers as defined in the customer segment. And we always tell companies that you need to spend a lot of time on these first two boxes, because, I mean, as we all know from business model canvas, everything kind of builds on each other. And if you don't have a really strong framework and foundation for defining that problem / customer segment and the solution and the value that you're bringing through that value prop, everything that you build on top of it just doesn't really mean that much.
Yeah. And that's a really important point too, because a lot of times, and this may happen with you as well, I know with our students and even our LaunchLab clients, when we ask them, who is your customer segment and what problem are you solving? A lot of times they want to solve all problems for all customers, right? Everybody wants my product. It's going to solve everybody's problem. How do you address that with entrepreneurs who are really trying to be all things to all customers?
Yeah, that's a tough one because it can happen in a couple of different ways, right? Like if you start talking to people and you typically find, oh, that's really what you have here is really interesting, but I need it to do this, or I need this application for it. And you start trying to chase those opportunities because you think that you're kind of fulfilling a need for that customer. And in doing so, you can quickly really kind of grow everything that your product does. What we really encourage companies to do is really when an opportunity presents itself, a real opportunity, that they slow down a little bit and kind of analyze that opportunity. Is this an opportunity that's specific to this one client? Or is this something that is indicative of the need of an industry as a whole? So, the trap that you can fall into is that you make all of these little changes to meet the needs of all of these different potential clients, and in doing so, you've watered down what you've done and the centrality of the core of it, so that it actually does something for everybody, but doesn't really fulfill the real need for anybody. And so it's always a struggle to not chase opportunity after opportunity, but that's why we go back to that cliche: fall in love with the problem, not with the solution. Because if you're laser focused on that problem and you find that there is a customer segment that needs that problem solved, then you will only focus on that little bit and hopefully get that initial traction that you can then use to grow and scale your business.
Yeah, that's great. And so I always like to end our discussions with advice for students, if you have any. So for students who are working in this problem identification, opportunity recognition area of their innovation, do you have any advice that you would offer them?
Yes, absolutely. How much time do we have? The biggest thing that I think people need to remember at all times is the necessity of talking to anybody and everybody that you can, and doing so in a way that gets you good data on what it is that you're doing. So there's two parts of that. Number one is talking to anybody and everybody that you can. That's typically the first hurdle, especially for technical talent or engineers or that type. They typically don't like to go out and just start asking random people whether they think their baby's ugly or not.
Right.
But that is the name of the game. The more people that you talk to, the better understanding you have of what is the true kind of need of your product, what features it needs to have, et cetera. A lot of times people say, I don't want to do that. I understand who my client is. I've made these assumptions. 9 times out of 10 or 99 out of 100, that tends to be wrong. Talking to people is the single most important thing that you can do to really validate something. So that's number one. And then the second part of that is talk to them in a way in which you get good data. Just as an anecdote of what I mean by that, I had a friend who was like a leather crafter, and he made himself a wallet. And so he took out his wallet one day when he was walking down the street with his friend. His friend said, "That's a beautiful wallet." And the guy said, "Oh, thank you. I made it myself." And he said, "You should start selling those. I would totally buy you one of those." So the guy took all the stuff out of the wallet and said, "Here, you can have this one for $20. And then the guy looked at him and said, "Yeah, on second thought, I already have a wallet." And the moral of that story is that people will tell you things, but when they actually get, and they'll be very kind of supportive and affirmative of whatever it is your business is. They just want to kind of go along to get along, but where the rubber meets the road is when you actually ask them to pay for it or engage in it. And then all of a sudden your the true intent comes out. So in that story, what if the guy said, "Oh, my friend wants a wallet. I should go home and make 100 of them and start selling them," only to find that nobody actually wants it when the time comes. And that's the other big part of this. Not only getting the data, but then also making sure that it is good data. And then once you get through those two things, you can really figure out who that customer segment is and what your value prop is for them. And then you're off to the races.
Yeah, no, that's awesome advice. And I think that too many times the customer gets left out of the conversation, right? And that's a perfect example of the wallet, because we don't talk to people. We make a lot of assumptions that everybody's going to want my innovation, but we haven't done any research. And it's interesting because researchers love to research, but they forget about the customer research.
Yeah, and to build on that a little bit more, the other assumption that entrepreneurs make a lot of the time is, I have to build this and show it to people in order to understand whether people really want it or not. And I totally understand where that comes from, but the entire purpose behind lean and agile development and doing business model canvases in advance and everything is you are trying to, as quickly and inexpensively as possible, figure out what you're building for whom and whether they'll pay for it. And you have to always remember that quickly and inexpensively as possible, because if you keep that in the forefront of your head, you don't start making anything until you already have that first unit sold. That's a little hyperbolic, but that's where you're trying to get to.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good advice. Thank you. Thank you, Cole, so much for doing this for us today. And it's going to be really exciting to have these students really start thinking about opportunity recognition in a little bit different perspective. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. And, I'll be providing my link to open office hours. So if anybody wants to sign up for one of those, they're open. We can talk about anything. And it's a great opportunity to kind of, dive into the whole entrepreneurial community and innovation ecosystem.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Bye.